Zach,
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt.
that's all right.
Did you want to like introduce what was happening? Introduce what we're doing
Oh yeah,
quickly and
that's a good idea. Hey, that's a good idea.
okay.
All right, welcome back. So today I'm going to do a breakdown of how I got some kind of 80s style vocal harmonies in this track. This was a track that I did for a video game intro, a Fortnite mod intro, and let's take a listen. First thing I might mention is I have this reference track called Harmony Reference. And if you just look at this, it's literally just a piano that has the notes that I'm trying to sing. And so when I'm tracking, I would just kind of go in. I'd be like, all right, we're going to do G2. And I would just have that playing and hold throughout so I could, get that. Helps a lot in the recording process. So this group, the way I color code these groups, things that are red are things that are disabled in the final track. So I kind of mark them as red so I know that they're not in use. And typically what I do is I'll edit everything down. And for something like this where I just have so many tracks, I will just resample those edited tracks down into a single one. So like this entire Fort Ball Fourths group got resampled into this, but I have that turned off for the purposes of the demonstration. So I have four different notes. G2 is the first note I'm singing, and then I did four voices for each note. So if I were to just solo this, and I'm going to turn my auto tune off. Like this is just a single voice. And you can see for these, if you look at the panning, I kind of have the four voices split up in the stereo field. So one is hard left, one is like mid left, mid right, and hard right. And so the four of them together is like... and then... that's really the basics of the track arrangement. On each of these note groups, I just have a EQ and a compressor. When you start stacking voices, your low end just builds up a ton. So I'm just cutting low end and kind of have a slow compressor to bring down some of those, make the volume consistent. One of the big things when doing these vocal stacks is kind of aligning the vocals, aligning the transients, and aligning the endings. And so you can see, especially on this right-hand side, I do this, you can see that these are faded. And so a lot of the time, like if I just delete this, they might look like this, where I try to match all the endings up. And so that process, usually doing something like go here and like cut it with Control E, and then I'll just drag this back so I have the ending on it. And then I'll Control Alt F to just throw a crossfade in there. That's usually how I go through and match up those endings. You get pretty quick at it. it does make a big difference in the end, so that all the notes are kind of ending at the same time. So let's see, and of course lining up the phrase start as well. You can see that these are pretty well aligned. And let's see, I think the only thing that was odd on this one was, this F4. Let's just check this if I solo this. Okay, I couldn't hit that F4, and so I just sang as high as I could, and then if I go into Melodyne and just restore original, you can see that was almost a D, and I tuned it up to an F to get that additional range, that high end on that. It seems like you can get away with about moving things up a third.
Do you ever warp your vocal audio, or you just
Warp
kind of
it? You mean
use
change
the
the
Ableton
pitching
warping?
on
Yeah, or
here?
for time
Yeah.
compression or anything like that?
Well, if I didn't have auto tune, that's what I would have done,
Mhm.
and it's literally the only difference using Melodyne to do that. It's just pitch shifting it up. Is that it also has an option to like stabilize how much fluctuation there is in the vocal. So I probably could have used it for this, because I mean honestly the auto tune doesn't do a lot for, like, when I'm stacking voices like this. Once you get 4 voices, it just sounds like you have natural coursing, and so
Mhm.
you know, and so the auto tune doesn't really move the needle very much on this. I just thought I needed it at the time, and so I used it.
I was just thinking that I mean, I think I would have time compressed to line up the endings, but I think what you do is actually a lot smarter because you don't get the weird artifacts from time compression, you know?
Oh, so you're saying you would have just kind of like changed the BPM so the lengths would
Or you
get
could put a warp marker in at the end and drag it in to time compress the whole thing.
right.
And
Yeah.
but I think what you're doing is actually a lot better because it retains the sound quality.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how much. I mean, I'm surprised how much doing a crossfade just smooths everything out.
Yeah.
Um, to me, the most important thing is having the start and having the ending. That's what makes it sound natural.
Yeah, that's
Anyways,
interesting because I don't think I've never done it that way. I always
oh,
typically just put a fade on at the end of wherever I want it to end. But you're
okay,
right. I imagine this is more natural.
yeah, no,
Totally.
that's honestly that's where I started, Cam. I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like this guy. Yeah, I'm just gonna move this over, and then I just noticed it like they weren't it sounds different when you don't have that release
Right.
of the phrase. So it's really subtle.
Did you tune the? I know you're talking about tuning up so you can reach a note, but did you tune these in general?
I they do all have tuning on, but like let's um like I'll do that's without tuning, and then with tuning without. So they're tuned, but again, it's not a big delta. Um,
Can you do? Can you? What if you did all of the tuning off? How would it sound in whole comparison to all of the tuning on?
for this single note, I can let's
Sure.
turn them.
I'm just wondering if it has kind of a
So
stacking.
here's
You know,
all off for this G2. I mean, to me, it just sounds like it has that. What's that plugin? That's microshift. It sounds like it's got microshift on it because they're a little off.
Can we hear it in context of the song?
Well, if you give me a second, because I have to do that on 16 tracks. I have to turn Melodyne off. It's just kind of not convenient to do.
That's fine. You don't have to.
Um, if you give me time, I could set up a macro to do them all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. There's this cool plugin, not to take us too far off track, but there is this cool plugin I noticed recently called AB. It's like whole
Okay.
purpose, like set up things like that, and then press this big AB button. Thought it was kind of interesting. As a side note, but
I would. I need it. I already need it. I didn't know it existed. Okay, so then that's in the context of that one. That's. Oh, okay. I should mention this. And then, so I have four notes: G, C, C, F. It's going in. It's like fourths, and then there's like this whisper track. It's just kind of like hiss, really. And then with the processing, I have this, which I have off right now. I have this one send that is called Vox Sparkle, and it's basically this super high. I'll just solo that send and solo this. Oops. It kind of just adds like a high, kind of like a hiss, kind of a hissy. And other than the echo, which I have off, that's all the FX that are on those. Pretty much the same thing for the last one, except for I got lazy and I only did three notes. I didn't do a whisper track because I was really learning when I was doing this, and I read, oh, you got to have that whisper track. And I was like, oh, it's going to make such a big difference. And then didn't make that big of a difference. And so I didn't do it for the last one, which is in fifths. And that's...
Sorry, the whisper track is only on which ones then? Which notes?
It's the first shout here. So
Oh, okay.
this. Oh, that's the resampled version. Sorry. Yeah, it's. Yeah, so this first section I call the fourths because I harmonized in fourths, and then this second one I harmonized in fifths. So I calling them the fourths and the fifths sections. That was pretty much it. This second one is also 4 voices for each note, but it's only 3 notes this time. I think after recording, like 30 some voices for the fourths, I was like, I don't want to do all that again, and I'm not doing this stupid whisper track again because I was just tired and running out of time. So I tried to consolidate.
Can we hear the difference between the fourths and the fifths?
In terms of the notes,
just how they sound. Relative to the code.
The piano roll as well, if you want to hear that. Here's fourths. Here's fifths. Fourths is like, if you're tuning if you just guitar strings open.
I was just interested in how it sounded. Really, the vocals is what I was interested in. Just to,
okay,
yeah, it's one thing to like look at the theory of it, and then it's another thing to look at it on a piano roll. But I feel like once it's really in the wild in an instrument or in a voice, you can really start to understand the feel of those intervals differently.
Yeah. So here's fourths with for the vocals.
That's awesome. Yeah, a little more tension in the fourths, very triumphant in the fifths.
Right, yeah. The fifth is more final. The fourth is like, I don't know, something's off.
Yeah.
Some tension.
That's like they're about to snap the ball.
Yeah.
About to get maybe clobbered by a lineman. And then fifth is like touchdown.
Right. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So this is from track 12 to track 53 is all of those. And then I think the chant was just a bunch of shouting, you know. That was, about 50 tracks of shouting.
Wow.
Damn.
Which was, it wasn't something that I had a lot of experience with, so I was just trying out. Like, I read somewhere where like, oh, you should give you want different timbres for when you're doing gang vocals. And so I was like, okay. They're like, you should come up with a persona for each of your vocals so it has a different feel. So I'm like, all right, this one's going to be John, and this is Jerry, and this is Mick. Great. And I had like this backstory of like how these guys might sound, shouting from a crowd. And then I was like, this is getting too much.
That's awesome.
I love that. So let's hear them. Introduce us to your characters.
Oh man. So I don't even know if at this point I don't remember what I kept and what I threw out. So this might very well be ones that I threw out because they all started sounding the same. So here was John. Here's Jerry.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Here's Mick.
Oh my God.
That's awesome. Classic Mick.
Classic Mick. He kind of had a strange accent or something.
You totally did it though. They sound like totally different deliveries. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so John is kind of like a scumbag at the bar. Jerry's kind of like a little nerdy. Mick is just kind of weird and goofy.
Darren could do your taxes probably.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, you just got to think of it like that. And I was trying like doing different shouts. I don't know why this one is. I can't hear that.
Is it saying 4-ball? I thought it was football.
No, it was for a Fortnite
football
ball mini game. So it was called Fort Ball.
Oh.
That was the name.
I see.
Yeah. So, that was a lot of that. And then I think I also I tried the whisper track for these, which, and then balancing all of those is, that was another thing. Just trying to find the sweet spot where it's poking through, but not taking over everything else.
That's good. I mean, it's a good thing you didn't have to do the whisper track for all of those characters. Some of those guys, I don't know. I just wouldn't want them whispering. Mostly Johnny.
Definitely not Jerry.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I resampled a bunch of those as well. And then these cheers, I don't remember. I got these from somewhere, and then I combined like a bunch of different stuff for just like crowd cheers.
So that's from you recording your voice 3,000 times?
This was for me finding a royalty-free sample of cheering somewhere and tuning it for the
Thank
needs.
goodness you didn't create 70,000 characters.
That would be awesome. Don't tell Jacob Cole yet. That's something he would do.
Oh, yeah, right. He's probably already done it.
3 weeks. I did this amazing thing where I recorded myself 3,000 times. Each time. You know what you could do too? I think I've heard people do this in productions before, where they go to like an actual stadium, and then just record the crowd noise. Like, no, you can't get sued by 3,000 individual voices that will all wash out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a public performance or something, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much the vocal breakdown. guys.
Could you talk about the plugin chain you used on this? Because it sounds so good.
I really didn't do anything other than Ozone,
Oh, okay.
and I I literally just did the auto thing, and it's
Uh-huh.
like you are whatever rock. I think it showed up as rock, and then I just kind of I forget. I'm afraid to hit this button because I think it's gonna redo it. But
Uh-huh.
usually the screen I'm used to seeing is has all the little knobs.
Oh, like the kind of the
Just
simplified, the fewer
Yeah, doesn't
variables.
matter. I'll hit it. Okay. Yeah, it's ready to listen. Um, yeah, that's weird.
is this just a is Ozone a mastering plugin? What is Ozone? I forget.
I would say yeah, it's like a mastering plugin. Um, and it's okay. Hold on. I guess I'll just do it. I'll just have it run. Oh.
Love
Okay.
that guitar.
Okay. So here's what it usually shows you, and so
Okay.
it's kind of interesting because it shows you, it'll have this vocal balance if you have vocals where you can be like, oh, do I want vocals forward or back? And then I usually just kind of, so yeah, it saw it as rock, and this is my dynamic um, little curve, and you can compare it to other curves,
Hmm.
which is interesting. They have another, what's it called? Audio. Oh yeah, they have this one called Isotope Audio Lens, which I've been trying to use, where you can just like hit capture at any time, and it'll capture this profile. And so I was trying to capture profiles for like this is a Def Leppard song. Um, this is like a
Oh, I love
and
photographs.
yeah, and so it's kind of interesting because then you can use those in here for your tonal balance,
Ah,
if
right.
which is kind of cool. But so yeah, I just basically went through that, and then I listen live, and I'll turn dynamics up and down, and usually everything I don't really touch except for clarity is the one that I can really hear when I crank it up and down. So kind of dial it in. And then I've been slowly learning how to do the ref track with Ozone, but I didn't do that on this track. So that's pretty much all I did for the chain.
Hmm. It sounds so good. I guess just from the so many layers and the harmony.
I can turn it off so you can hear it without.
Sure.
I turn the harmony reference off. On. Well, hold on. That's a bad comparison because of the loudness. So they have this.
Oh, okay.
You can do this, which matches the volume of the input signal, so that you don't get the huge. Okay, so that's without and with. No, with. So it's mostly like that higher, EQ, you know.
Yeah.
Um, that's really what I hear with it
So
all.
so all those vocals are just dry.
For the vocals, all I have for the vocal chain is so let's look at fourths. I have an echo,
Oh, okay.
and then this Vox Sparkle, which goes into EQ and then to CLA vocals,
Nice.
which is really just compressing the heck to get that super high end,
Hmm.
that kind of like a hiss sound that you hear in all the Def Leppard. So it's basically EQing the heck out of it, super high, and just like compressing the heck out of it.
I think that hiss is part of what makes it sound so good, and I think the whisper track accentuates that even more, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, because it kind of just turns into noise,
Uh-huh.
and I think that does give it some of that sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of that sound. I think it's part of why it sounds so good. It makes it sound so like fresh, kind of like a hiss of like a refrigerator door at a convenience
Yeah,
store.
Yeah.
It's kind of pleasant noise.
yeah. Well, because then even in like a big crowd, you know, it kind of turns into this like this noise,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think that's kind of what I was imagining this Vox Sparkle to be, was kind of adding like that high frequency noise to the vocals.
And it's kind of soft too, you know, like a harsh high frequency is different, but it's got a nice softness. That's how I think about it when I hear it.
Totally. It's like a pleasing kind of sparkly hiss on top. It's hard to describe, but it's unmistakable.
Yeah. Not like getting that sudden cable TV fuzz where it's like
Yeah.
super jarring.
Yeah, it's not white noise.
It's like smooth. It's all smoothed out, just very diffuse. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. So and this was really just trying to follow some tutorials online, and I've done it a couple times, so it seems like this is the basic formula that people use. But I'm sure as I continue, I'll continue to learn.
Yeah, they're those CLA plugins. I love them. I mean, you probably saw I had a few of them in my system. They're so
definitely.
useful.
This is the only one I have, but it's so easy to just throw it on the track. And pretty much everyone I see that's tracking vocals, sometimes they'll just be like, "Oh, I just throw CLA on it, and then later I might remove it."
Right. And you can always add other stuff, but it's like instant sound good plugin in my mind.
Yeah, especially, you know, you sit down to track and you're like, "Oh, my voice is so dry," and you're like, "Let's just crank this reverb up a little bit."
Yeah, right. There it is.
There we go.
Zach, how do you think about your notes? Is it all in the same octave, or is it ever across multiple octaves? And how low do you go? Because you got a great baritone. I can tell just by your speaking voice. I feel like, do you have a good baritone singing voice? Do you ever do low notes?
Well, this is as low as I could. G2 was kind of as towards the lower end.
Oh, okay.
This G2. So yeah, I kind of, you know, this ranges from, and I couldn't hit this F4. I could only hit 2, 3, the D. So I'm going from, you know, G2 to D4 was where I split this. So, you know, it's
that's big range.
I think I have a very average range, which is why I had to auto tune this up to F4.
It totally worked though. I mean, I question that high note.
Yeah. And then
I have no idea what my range is.
Oops. Oh, really? You just have. Well,
I've never
piano, Cam. Just sit down.
Easily figure that out though. Yeah.
You just, you know, find your lowest and. Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to do it because I don't want to put limitations on myself, and I feel like if I defined it, I would be like, "That's my box." But that's
I mean, it's
silly.
not a permanent box. You know, you exercise, you can stretch your voice. And see, you know, when I first started taking voice lessons, you know, my first lesson, he's like, "This is what your range is," and you know, over time, it did stretch quite a bit because I was very new. And so it's cool to see that range, but also it's really helpful to know when I sit down and write something, I know like, oh, if I do it in this key or this range, I'm going to have nothing behind these notes. You know,
right.
Like especially if it's too low, like I got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's harder than when it's too high for some reason.
When you did that, Zach, did they do they test your falsetto too, or just like full voice?
No, it was just chest voice. It
Okay,
was what the test was. Just how far your chest voice goes.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But I think this F4 is not my chest voice. Or sorry, the for the fifths.
You mean the transpose one?
Yeah, let's see. I'm so lost because this is this happens sometimes. I'm like, where
Yeah.
exactly am I? Um,
Zach, you only have 30 million tracks to deal with. What's the
I know
problem?
there's only 100 and some tracks. So okay, I think this F4 is. I think this is falsetto. Yeah,
Okay.
that's falsetto. It's got nothing behind it.
But it blends like really well. I think, and maybe
Yeah.
part of that high end stuff we're talking about maybe comes from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and and it's cranked up to get the volume on it, so it's compressed to heck. Um, but that's kind of that rock core sound. The rock singers are typically very high vocal range to cut through the mix, and so a
Yeah.
lot of those harmonies are very high, and it's the very top end that I think gives it that sizzle and that sound. Because
Yeah.
I tried stacking more notes underneath, and it just didn't help it at all. It really doesn't
Hmm.
give it the sound. So
It's okay if you'd rather save this for another session, but would you mind taking a minute to talk about your guitars? Because I'm always blown away at how good those sound.
I'd love to. Um, yeah, well, my guitars, I use the same guitar VST for everything. Everyone's always asking me, what guitar VST is
Is
that?
that
I
the
feel
orange
like I
tree
should
one
just.
you had mentioned a little while ago?
Yeah, it's called, so let's see, Evolution. It's this Orange
Okay.
Tree Samples Evolution Rock Standard. And this is, that's what this looks like. So let's see if I just go into this. Oh yeah, I have this beat repeat for this first section.
Ah, that's nice.
That's the only effect I have. Other than that, it's 100% this plugin, and I'll walk through that here. But the first thing to point out is that you can see the velocity on these notes, and so I'm just playing a G power chord here, and you can see that these low velocity ones are palm muted,
Hmm.
and then these ones are open. And so over here you can see this mapping of velocities to expression. And so if it's 60 or above, it's full sustain, and these ones are around 16, so they're going to be this palm mute 2. And so that's pretty much it for the how I do like chords and stuff. And the only other thing in here, I'm not using strum, I'm not using the chords feature. Just the tone has all these different like stomp boxes you can turn on and off,
Hmm.
which I think is pretty common for every guitar VST. And then it's got some stuff for like, is this single tracking? You can do multi-tracking straight through here. I'm not doing it on this one. You can model the pick if you want it to do economy picking versus alternate picking. You can tell it how much pick noise you want. And like when it releases a note, how loud is that? So if I turn that down,
Hmm.
it's really subtle stuff, but it all adds up in the end. And that's kind of the bulk of that. And then I have another guitar here, which is the lead guitar, and this just has a additional delay on it.
Same plugin?
Exact same plugin. exact same preset, I
Uh-huh.
believe. So everything there is the same. And this one I played this one on the LinnStrument because there's bends in it, I think. Okay, so yeah, so if I go to this view, unfold.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
So you can see the MPE data here. Like you can see this, that was me wiggling my finger left and right for the vibrato.
That's so cool.
And then you can see this D4 is getting bent up to this note, which is F sharp. So that's kind of cool. And then you can, there's like pressure data it's not used for this VST, but that's part of the MIDI stuff too. I guess I did these separately.
What was the vibrato control you were talking about?
This was just so this is a recording of me live playing on the LinnStrument, and so what that would be is just me, that vibrato is just grabbing it and
back and forth,
and forth,
And then what is it called in Ableton? Does that MIDI CC have a name? How does that?
So when I record it, so this has enable MPE, which is MIDI polyphonic expression. And so when that's enabled, it records these additional channels. This one is just a bend. I think it's CC 78. So it's just a MIDI channel that's assigned to bend. And so it just, if I hit a note and then I move to the right of it, that's seen as a bend up, and then left is a bend down. So
is that shown in those two lanes below?
This is different. This is slide, and then this bottom one is pressure. This is like how hard I'm pushing.
Oh. But would Ableton show the vibrato in those lanes below? I'm forgetting how those lanes work.
No, it's shown up here just with the bend. Okay. So I'm really using bend as a vibrato. Some instruments actually have like a vibrato parameter you can turn up that will just turn on vibrato. This is just, I'm doing vibrato just by virtue of bending the note.
So is that plugin not MPE, but when you say enable MPE, Ableton just sort of figures it out and makes it MPE? Is that kind of what's happening?
Yeah, the plugin is not MPE. In fact, this is a kind of a problem. So the thing about MPE is it has a bend range. It can have a bend range of up to 48 semitones. And this plugin, you actually have to set what the bend range is. Why can't I find it? Oh, here it is. Bend range up and down. It's a perfect 15th. So it's like, that's either 12 or 24. Perfect 15th. It's not an interval I use a lot. And so it can't bend the full MPE range. So I have to turn my LinnStrument, like I turn it down to only bend 24 semitones or whatever.
So,
yeah. Aha!
My internet dropped, guys.
Oh no!
What the heck? I'm all in there looking at my router, like
how
time.
What was it like?
20 days goes down during this.
Well, thankfully we did the backup recording.
Sweet. I mean, I don't know what happens there. It still says recording, so.
Oh, really?
We'll see. Yeah.
It's just been recording this whole time, maybe. Yeah, maybe it has nothing to do with your... Are you the host of this sec?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Actually, once you got off, it said Paul is now the host. So I don't know if
nice.
Matters. But
so I started just explaining a plugin I don't know anything about. If that
we were trying to fill time.
Right on. I think that's it. Other than I love this MIDI 120. I have this random squeal as one of the.
We can't see your screen anymore, by the way.
Oh, that's funny. Just pointing stuff out,
You were sorry, guys.
Just like construction paper to kind of represent your DAW, and
And I'll hold it up to the screen.
yeah,
Maybe
that'll be the background. Yeah.
Have you guys ever watched that What We Do in the Shadows?
Yeah, a little bit.
The one scene where they're like, we can't look in the mirror, and so they're like drawing a portrait of what the other person looks like before they go out and like holding it up, and they're just these terrible drawings.
So she's trying to watch it.
Could you finish the thought about? I was asking like this. You were saying this isn't MPE, but so there's an issue using MPE with it or something.
Right. So I found that you can generally use plugins that are not MPE, but you don't get all the features. So, like one of the things about MPE is that it's supposed to allow you to do polyphonic bends, like, whatever, 10 bends at a time, and track each of those bends separately. So if you try to do stuff like that, you can, like in the VST, you bend one note, and if you bend a second note, it'll take over the bend value of the first note.
I see.
Stuff like that.
Right.
So you just, it's random depending on your DAW and the VST. Ableton does some weird stuff with MPE, but since version 11, it's been pretty easy to map to get the behavior that you want for legacy stuff. But
it doesn't matter if you're doing a solo because it's only one note. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. It's pretty much monophonic. And, sometimes what I'll do if I really want polyphony is I'll just create, I'll have a VST per string, and I'll assign them to the different rows on my device. And then I can do, and then that'll kind of get past anything. Of course, it's total pain in the butt.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Like if you wanted to do a lead with harmony in it, is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. Or like, bending 2 notes at a time and stuff like that. But, I don't really need that for live playing. And there's other VSTs have great MPE support. Like, Arturia stuff is pretty great MPE support across the board, and especially Pigments.
Okay. And do you play this on the LinnStrument like just like a live performance, basically?
Yeah, I just sit there and I jam, and put it on a loop and I jam. And sometimes I don't know if I kept it, but you can kind of see I was like jamming for 21 bars on this one, and then most of the time I'll have like 200 bars of jamming, and I have to go back through like, okay, that was kind of cool, and I'll just as a way to come up with parts. Yeah, it's the best.
And is the LinnStrument in any way laid out? Is it laid out in a way that's analogous to a fretboard at all, or no?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Is this right side for you? Right side up?
Think so.
So this is like each of these horizontal sections you can think of as a guitar string. You can see they're segmented like squares. But it's like having 8 strings. It's like an 8-string guitar, basically, that has more than 12 frets.
And is each row a fourth apart?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it really is like a guitar string.
It's pure fourths, so you don't have the weird
GBE thing. Yeah.
Here's your third, Yeah.
And
so it's amazing, and so I guess you call that. There's a word for it that I'm forgetting, but it's great because you learn how to do a chord, and it's the same everywhere. A minor chord is the same for all across the fretboard. If you know what a root note is, it's uniform, which is makes it so easy to learn.
And does that knowledge carry over to how you use your push?
It does. I'm much better at using my push in chromatic mode now.
Okay.
Before I would usually have it locked to a scale, and in chromatic mode was like, this is kind of weird, but now because this only works in the LinnStrument, you can only do in chromatic mode because of the bending. If you set it, if you were a scale, the bends wouldn't make sense because they wouldn't be uniform.
Right.
So I'm used to that now, and it has helped. So I can kind of live play the push a lot better now in terms of chords and stuff.
Oh, that's very cool. Can you play the guitar lead again?
Sure.
That's incredible. It's just so it sounds real to me.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks.
What scale did you say you use on the push?
The scale.
Or like what mode of
Yeah.
I don't know what the term is.
Well, usually when you turn it on, the default is that it's set to a scale. Like it'll be set to C major by default, right?
Right. I think, but I didn't mean the scale. I think I meant the way it's arranged, as if it's like perfect force, or how the notes are arranged in that big.
Oh,
quadrant.
I see. I just leave it on the default, which is, if it's in chromatic mode, is fourths, I believe. It's the same.
Okay. And that's the same as the same as your LinnStrument. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Is that the same as guitar?
It is for the bottom 4 strings on the guitar.
Okay, but for this, it does it for all 8 of those slots, all 8 of those rows.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
It really made me think that if I were to go back and play guitar, I would be tempted to try a pure fourths tuning.
Yeah.
It's just what your brain's used to now.
Yeah, it's what I think of. And, it took me a while on the LinnStrument. This is completely off topic, but because I would play it because I had guitar background and I would play it like a guitar, and then I started realizing, like, why am I doing this? I can hit more than one note on the same string at a time on the LinnStrument. Like I can,
interesting. Right.
And it really changed the way I thought about how scales were laid out and what I could do while I was soloing. So it's
Why is it that you could hit them more? Just because they were closer together, the buttons? Or?
Yeah, because it makes it easier to do certain chords. Because you're just used to, if you know how to play a bar chord, whatever, on your uke, on a guitar, you kind of are always thinking in terms of playing one note at a time on each string, right? But some fingerings are a lot easier when you're using 2 hands if you can just use two notes on the same string, or
That's so interesting.
3 notes on the same string. It just makes certain patterns easier.
Interesting.
Or LinnStrument. Sorry.
Yeah. LinnStrument's super cool, and Roger Linn, the creator of it, he does a live, like a Zoom call every month. You get on and chats about music, chats about technology. He's a super cool guy. I'm always a little, at first, very starstruck because, he's the Linn drum. Right. Linn drum is such a iconic thing, and MPC is very iconic, and he's quite the inventor, and he's just super nicest, chillest guy, super accommodating. If you buy a LinnStrument, he just gives you his phone number. Like, if there's a problem, call me.
That's crazy.
Yep. No, I don't think there's anyone like that, And I think he said that he just crossed the 5,000 unit mark.
That's amazing
on the LinnStrument.
Wow.